the income does allow us to travel more, to invest more, to save more, to have a home within 10 minutes of downtown Nashville. All those things, huge pros.
Jacob, welcome to the podcast, man. We're excited to have you on today.
Thanks, Drew. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be here.
For sure. We're definitely excited to hear more about the opportunity you have as house hacking. And before we get to that point, though, can you kind of lead us up to the decision to get involved in the house hacking side of things?
Absolutely, yeah. So right after my wife and I got married, we were living in an apartment about 35 to 40 minutes outside of Nashville. But my wife works downtown, so we wanted to buy a house a little closer to the city to cut down on her commute. So this was in 2023, a little over a year ago. As we were starting kind of the home buying process, like the very early steps of just looking at Zillow more seriously, we realized that anything that we wanted to buy that was in a nice area, that was the kind of house we want to live in, would essentially double our rent that we were currently paying in our apartment, which just didn't make sense financially for us. I had known about house hacking for a while, but didn't know if it was something that I'd actually want to do, or if it would be something that would make sense for us. But it turns out that it was. And as we got into that, I was like, okay, we got to figure something out. And house hacking was that thing that allowed us to buy a house, but still maintain that financial security that we wanted. So that's kind of what led us to the whole house hacking thing.
Awesome. And for those maybe wondering what is this house hacking topic, can you kind of give us your definition of what house hacking is to you?
Sure, yeah. So essentially it's where you buy a home or a property with the intention of living in part of it and then renting out the rest and using that income to help supplement or sometimes fully cover your mortgage on whatever property that you bought.
Awesome. Does that cover like all styles of housing? Is it available to kind of any residential properties?
Yeah, that's one of the cool things about it is you can kind of personalize it and customize it to whatever your goals are. So for us, our house is a single family home, but you can kind of think of it like a duplex stacked on top of each other or each level, because our house is kind of built into a hill and it has a separate entrance for the basement. So kind of a separate unit there. And then for us upstairs, but for some people, you might have known people in college who bought a house or whose parents bought a house and, the one person lives in it and rents out the rest of the rooms to roommates. So you can park a camper in your yard if you bought a house and rent that out. It's just some sort of way where you're buying something and then adding some sort of income generation to whatever property that you bought.
And kind of building off that cash flow mindset, what route of house hacking did you guys take and what else is out there? What else is available to participate in?
Yeah, so really the big two kind of categories that you can look at is what type of renting you'll be doing. So whether that's short term on platforms like Airbnb or long term where you're signing, like a 6 or 12-month lease with a tenant. And so for us, we do Airbnb. Being in Nashville's a pretty hot vacation market. There's a lot of people who come here for lots of different things. And so it made sense for us to go the Airbnb route because we could make more from that. We compared what we could earn doing a long-term rental versus a short-term, and the short-term was more profitable from the numbers that we ran and just kind of the people we talked to. But those are the main two things to look at is long-term versus short-term.
And when you were kind of comparing the different options, were you looking at it from like an ROI perspective, a headache perspective? What was some of your like leading factors that led to your decision?
Yeah, I mean, all of the above, there are definitely pros and cons to both methods. For us specifically and this house specifically, our basement is, you can kind of think of it like a hotel room. It doesn't have a kitchen or any type of appliances or anything. There's a space for a coffee bar, but we would have had to do some renovations to have a kitchen. And obviously, if someone's renting out a unit longer term, they're going to want to have some of those things. And on top of that, the previous owner of our house were actually renting out the basement on Airbnb, and were able to show us their numbers. And so for our situation, it was kind of a no-brainer to go the short-term route. That being said, if we were maybe in a different area, if we were further out from Nashville, and the numbers didn't make sense, which we'll get into how to figure out kind of your numbers later. But that's what led us to the short-term route.
Very cool. No, that's definitely a great comparison to understand that some things are going to be better for someone's situations versus another. I completely appreciate that breakdown for sure. So getting into some of the entry level stuff, right? Talk us through even the basics for someone understanding, hey, what loan options do I have for a single family home, just to get a better understanding of what a typical person can expect.
Yeah. So, we personally used an FHA loan, which we only had to put 3.5% down. You could also probably go a conventional loan route, which don't quote me on this, but I think it's 5% down, or somewhere around there is kind of the entry level thing. But really just the first step is talk to a lender who can dive into your financials and tell you, hey, here's what I would recommend. Also, a really important thing is here's what you can afford. So then when you're looking at properties, you can have an idea of, okay, here's kind of my ballpark. And that's kind of the baseline for running the numbers, for seeing what you could bring in from Airbnb versus a long-term tenant, and all those things. It kind of stems from talking to a lender to know your numbers before getting started. And then the second thing is obviously your agent. For us, we actually found an agent as I was in kind of my research phase of Googling house hacking in Nashville, and just seeing what was out there. I found our future agent's YouTube channel, and he had actually house hacked himself with his wife. They had done it twice in Nashville, and now he helps. It's not the only thing that he does, but he helps a lot of people house hack. So for us, finding kind of a specialized agent was super helpful because we could get his input, his insight, because his firsthand experience. And that won't always be the case. But I think it would be a good thing if you can find an agent that's at least familiar with house hacking, that can kind of help guide you through the process.
And just to dig a little bit into that, if we can, if someone is unable to find someone to support them like that, maybe what are some top 3 items that your agent was able to help support you in and better understanding what your outcome would be?
Yeah, I mean, really, it was just his experience of knowing, you can look at the research tools and see what your projected revenue is and all these things, but our agent, really knows this market, knows not just Nashville, but like the neighborhoods, and kind of those type of trends. We live in Donaldson, it's kind of the suburb of Nashville that we're in. He's able to tell us, here's kind of the trends for the last 5 years, it's up and coming, all those things, was really helpful for us to know. And, each agent's going to have their own experience, I think. But for us, it was really helpful to just have his experience that can be passed on to us.
Were there any tools that this agent provided to help understand some of these finances a little bit better? You mentioned, again, referencing some like tools and stuff like that. Do you have any off the top of your head?
Yeah. So, our agent had a tool that he had custom built on his site that would filter Zillow and all the other listing sites for house hackable properties. So those are homes that had basements or additional units. So that was helpful. And then in terms of general tools, AirDNA, AirDNA.co is the site. That's what will help you estimate short-term revenue that you could expect from an Airbnb. They have a free version right now. You just have to create an account and you can type in an address of any property. Then you enter in like the bedroom, bathroom count, how many guests it could hold. So for us, we entered in the number as a 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, 4 guests, and it'll spit out, here's your expected revenue. It pulls, from my understanding, the way it works is it pulls all the other properties around us and kind of gives you that estimate. And then for longer term tenants, or if you wanted to go that route, Rentometer.com or Rentometer, one of those, is the long-term version of AirDNA. Basically, you type in an address and it gives you the average rents of the surrounding, I think, mile or mile and a half. So you can kind of look at those two numbers and say, okay, which one of these is going to be more profitable for us?
For sure. And something that stands out to me before we get too deep in the numbers is in this case, you're doing it with a spouse, someone may be doing it with a girlfriend, someone may be doing it with friends. Talk to us about how that conversation went, right? Obviously, a lot of people say, yeah, this is a great opportunity to where we can save money, but again, it's going to impact potentially a relationship or what's going on, again, with your family, your friends, whoever you're doing this with. Talk to us about the conversation you had with your spouse and how that went down and how it worked out for you guys.
Yeah, definitely. And that's, that is a massive part of this. If you're married or with a significant other, it has to be a joint decision, in my opinion. Like, it doesn't need to be something, I wouldn't want this decision to cause a rift or anything later on. And so that's definitely something to consider, because at the end of the day, you're both going to be living in this property. You're going to have people in your space, and so it's important to be on the same page and just make sure. I did my best to help, my wife kind of understand the whole thing. I was sending her videos of like, hey, watch this, here's how it works. And we just kind of weighed all the things of people in our space. We're going to have to manage this. We're going to have to clean this unit. You could hire a cleaner. But, all those things go into it. And it was really important for us to be on the same page. And then also the conversation of, kids. Like, we were thinking about, next steps of, could we have a kid or kids in this home with people downstairs? There's noise transfer. Like, if our kids are running around up here and there's people in the basement, like, how would that work? So I would say all those are things to consider, and considering in business, they call it like an exit strategy. But things that you could, okay, if we want to stop doing this, what are our options? What would that look like? And I think, considering that before pulling the trigger and getting a mortgage, you need to have thought through all of those things beforehand.
No, I appreciate that. And I'm curious, was there somewhat of removal of a financial talk and even just talking incentives between the two, right? Hey, if we do this, we could maybe take more vacations or we could have more time. Was there financials removed, or was it strictly like a financial conversation?
No, it's both. I think there are pros and cons to house hacking, and it's just kind of weighing those out. The income does allow us to travel more, to invest more, to save more, to have a home within 10 minutes of downtown Nashville, all those things, huge pros, versus some of the things that aren't as easy, of having to take time to clean, to manage, message guests, deal with people messaging us, at night, all those things. It was just kind of a potential, and we looked at it as temporary sacrifice and saw those areas for the immediate benefit and payoff of saving, investing, traveling, and then ideally being able to set us up for safer and better financial security in the future of what we're able to do during this time financially. Our home's also appreciating, we're gaining equity by paying the mortgage, all those things that you get from owning a home are benefits. And we looked at it as, we're going to do this for a few years. We don't know how long. With the goal of it setting us up in the future to have, a house where no one rents out a basement or anything like that. But we could get to that point from this sort of small sacrifice or strategy that we're doing right now.
For sure. And it sounds like you guys have a great partnership between the two of you. With that, is the responsibility of this investment, if you will, shared between the two of you equally, or is there just kind of some different things you each handle individually?
Yeah, no, it's 100% shared. I was more involved in kind of the financials of, the lending and all those things. My wife was more involved in decorating and pictures and getting all of our listing stuff together for Airbnb. Thankfully I had her for that because I was no help. And so it's shared. And with cleaning, we both clean whenever we're both here and able to. We both message guests. So it's totally shared. And I think that's a really cool part of it as well, as we're able to kind of do it together. So it's fun.
That's awesome. And sorry, I apologize for the tangent, but I'm in a relationship myself. Those are conversations we're having. I'm just very curious to get that real experience. So I appreciate it. Thank you for your openness.
Yeah,
so to definitely dig into some of the financial things that some of our audience may be looking for next, there's some return references you can give us in terms of what you guys have seen from your property.
Yeah. So I can tell you kind of our mortgage and our income and all those things. And this will obviously be different for, everybody in every market, different incomes, all those things. But I can just tell you from our experience kind of what that looks like, if that's good with you. So our mortgage, we bought, as I said, about a year ago in 2023. Our interest rate on our mortgage is 6.75. So decently high, but our mortgage is $3,700 per month. That's after taxes, insurance, all the things. That's what comes out of our account. And we bring in on average anywhere from 3,000 to our best months are like 3,800. So those months, we live for free. But even on those average months, we're essentially living for $800, out of pocket, which is awesome. It's cheaper than what we were paying in rent at our apartment before. And that was kind of our goal when we set out was, could we find a situation where we were paying $1,800, which is our rent, or less after our income and our mortgage, subtracting those two. So that was our goal whenever we were setting out to do it. And that's kind of what it looked like for us.
Awesome. And now that you've had some experience behind that, could you see possibly greater returns, less returns based off of the property you had went with? Maybe an example being like a duplex, like if you truly have a fully fledged second styled house, if you will, or triplex. Again, as it grows larger, do you think that the rate of return would increase with it, or some of that would actually cause more headaches for your experience? Kind of talk us through some of those understandings.
Yeah. I think it could. I think having a full kitchen could allow us to charge more. And also a duplex, there is less, if it's a side-by-side duplex, a lot of time that main wall separating the two units is pretty soundproof. Like there's a lot less noise transfer. For us, our house was built in 1956, I think, decently old. So there's a lot of noise transfer. We've done a lot of things to soundproof as much as we can. Because there's like a stairway that is in the middle of our house with a door to the basement. So we've done things like add a sound panel behind the door and all those things. But really it just comes down to the numbers, to looking at other properties, trying to get an idea what they're making, literally going on Airbnb, searching for guest houses in Nashville, seeing what they charge per night, how many nights they're booked, going on AirDNA, experimenting with different type of property combinations. So I think to answer your question, it could, but it really just comes down to running the numbers and trying to talk to people if you can. You can message, everyone might not respond, but you can message other hosts and say, hey, you don't have to answer me, but I'm curious if you'd be open to sharing, like, they had a duplex. How is this going for you? What do your numbers look like? So that would be kind of my advice. But for us, this is what made the most sense.
That's a good point. I think that's sometimes underplayed. The interest some investors will have in just having that conversation with you and sharing their experience may be very beneficial to someone starting out. Exactly to your point. Hey, I'm either new to the market or I've been in the market, but I'm not in this style of investing. It seems like you are. Could you talk to me about it? That seems like it's definitely something that could be very helpful for someone trying to start out.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people are, they don't have that scarcity mindset of, there's plenty of wealth to go around, and helping one new Airbnb in a area with hundreds of thousands of people is not gonna negatively affect me if I'm that seasoned investor, and people, I believe most people are good and want to help other people, and so you just kind of have to take that step and ask, or you'll never know.
For sure, for sure. And so we've talked about the numbers a little bit here, breaking down the other side of this, the management side, or some of the things that you have to do for the property. Could you talk us through some of that exposure and what all you're involved in regarding that?
Sure. Yeah. So I'll take you back to kind of when we first closed and we're trying to get everything ready. We used Facebook Marketplace was a huge thing for us. It was kind of our routine. Every day, my wife would find something on Marketplace, and after work, I'd go pick it up. That was our routine for like 3 weeks. I would just go every day, whether it was a chair or a small table or lamp or whatever. And that saved us a lot of money, buying used stuff on Marketplace for way cheaper than if you bought new. And so that was kind of part of the setup. And then I mentioned getting the pictures and getting your listing live is really that huge thing. And on Airbnb specifically, whenever you go live, they'll boost your listing and you'll get a bunch of views and hopefully bookings right then. So that was really fun. Was as soon as we went live the next day and for the next like week or two, we were getting like 2 or 3 bookings a day. Like, oh my gosh, it's working, But in terms of the management, we have a copy and paste check-in message. We have a door code that connects to an app on our phone that we can create a door code for each guest and just paste it in our little welcome message. It's kind of like, hey, we're excited to host you. Here's your check-in time. Here's your code. Here's where the coffee pods are, that kind of thing. And then normally they just say, okay. And then they kind of come check in. I never have to see them, which is nice. And management, most people don't have any issues. Most people don't even ask questions. I like to send a check-in message normally after they check in, like the next day, and say, hey, Drew, is everything okay? Do you all have everything you need? And I think that just helps for kind of making them feel the hospitality, which then I think translates to positive reviews, which is the name of the game in the short-term rental space. And so that's normally what happens while they're here. And then when they check out, we send them a message that says, once we go check and make sure everything's okay, hey, thanks for taking such great care of our place. We'll be leaving you a 5-star review, and we hope you'll do the same for us. Safe travels. That is a really important thing that encourages people to leave a review, and not just any review, but a 5-star review, hopefully. And then after that, we just clean. Normally, it's wash the sheets, the towels, vacuum, wipe stuff down. Normally takes about an hour, give or take, per clean, and get ready for the next one and start it over.
And just on that real quick, are you wrapping in the amount that you charge for cleaning into your monthly return as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we do. That's included. So we charge a $50 cleaning fee, which what we did to figure that out was just look at what the other properties around us were charging, kind of get a ballpark for that. If we had a cleaner, I work from home, and so it's super easy for me to just pop down there in the middle of my day or whenever to clean. But if you needed to hire a cleaner, you would obviously negotiate that with them. I do have a backup cleaner. I haven't had to use any of them yet. My in-laws live within 30 minutes, so my mother-in-law normally comes if we need help. But if you had to have a cleaner, I have one that can come, and she charges $65 per clean. So we'd essentially just be paying $15 more for that cleaning fee. And if we did that consistently, I would say we'd probably up our cleaning fee to $65 just to kind of break even there. But that cleaning fee is included. And for us, self-managing and self-cleaning, we're not paying a property manager. We're not paying a cleaner. We get to just pocket everything. And taking an hour to clean once or twice a week is worth that kind of, I guess, $100 to me. So that's the way that we do it.
For sure. And don't let me downplay your story here at all, but definitely building off the idea of having a strategy that is the least headache factor, is bringing tenants right to you. It seems like the strategy you have has made it very easy to get involved in the real estate investing game, right? Again, you're not worrying about management companies. You're not worried about tracking down tenants. I mean, some of this stuff is involved in Airbnb. So would you say that's almost the, again, I don't want to downplay it, so carefree is not the right word, but has it been, from your perspective, relatively easy to get involved in?
Yeah, I mean it's the lowest barrier to entry real estate investment that there is. I mean, um, if we wanted to buy, I've always wanted to own an Airbnb. I always had in my mind like a standalone, home or condo or whatever. But a lot of those type of investment loans, you have to put 10, 15, 20% down, on maybe a $500,000 property. Like that's so much capital. Whereas for us, um, it's crazy, but our house was priced at 500,000 and our all-in cost, the seller covered some closing costs. I think we paid 12,000 to get in. And, like there's nothing that you can get into for as cheap as that for a $500,000 asset. So it was definitely the lowest barrier to entry. And I can't think of a strategy that's any easier to get into than house hacking.
For sure. And just while on those talks of like fees and other things, are there other costs associated to be aware of? Like, did you go for a higher insurance package now that you're renting out to people? Like, again, is there other things to be aware of?
Yeah, I think I got a little bit of extra coverage, but I want to say it's only like an extra $100 or $200 a year, just for an umbrella policy, which is just like a personal liability thing up to like, I think it's $1.5 million or something like that. That's extra, but for the income that it brings in, it kind of pales in comparison to what you'll generate. Other fees, I mean, there are fees involved with buying a home, there's closing costs and all those things, which I'm not a real estate expert, so I won't get too detailed into that. But your lender and your agent can help give you a better idea of what those specific things look like before you kind of pull the trigger on anything. But for Airbnb, I mean, our utility bills probably a little bit higher than it would be if it was just us here. But again, for the amount of income that we generate from it, we don't really notice. Um, so that's really all I would kind of advise to.
For sure. And just because it may come up from your experience and the conversations you've had with other investors, we've obviously built this conversation that this is as easy as to get into as it can be. So throwing in something like an LLC can make that more difficult. Do you see any benefit to what you're doing to put this under an LLC, or strictly just stick with, if you're house hacking, keep it under your personal until you maybe plan to move out?
Yeah. I mean, for us, it was just pretty simple for us to just keep it under our personal finances. Like I said, get the extra liability insurance. I guess you could do it under an LLC if you wanted to. I'm not really sure you might have some more protection. Speak to your accountant or a lawyer about that if you're really interested with it. But for us, it was easy, and that's really what we were going for. We wanted to get our property launched as soon as we could, after we closed. And so that's just kind of the route we took.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. And now as we're kind of heading towards the back end, kind of looking into the future here, where do you see the opportunity of house hacking going, and how has it changed?
Yeah. I mean, I think the opportunity I think it's growing to me with the way that the real estate market is, for people of, my generation trying to buy their first house. It's more difficult than it ever has been to afford it. And even if you get approved for it, like, it would not have been a wise financial decision for us to get this mortgage of $3,700 a month. It just wouldn't have made sense for us financially. What we looked at, what we were saving every month in the apartment versus what we'd be paying, like, we wouldn't be saving much at all with that at the time. And so I think there's always going to be an opportunity for people to house hack, and you don't have to do it like us. Like, if I was a single guy, I might rent out these rooms. Like, I might rent out the basement and the other 2 bedrooms and make who knows how much a month, So I think the opportunity is continuing to grow. And I think there's more of an opportunity for people, like with the rooms example. I think there are more people renting rooms than ever before. So I think there's a pretty large market for it. And in the future, I mean, I'm a believer in Airbnb and short-term rentals. There's more volatility with it. But in the long term, I mean, people love to come to Nashville and they can pay me to stay here while they do it. So there's so many cities out there like that. And that's kind of my take on it.
That's awesome, man. And kind of similar with the approach of, again, moving forward, things available for the future. There's obviously the idea of the live-in flip, right? Some people did rehabs with their spouse, do the live-in flip style. They'd flip one, rent it, move on. With that, do you kind of possibly plan to do I don't have a good name for it, like a live-in house hack, where like if you move out of this one, move on to the next, is it a consideration to maybe house hack that one and kind of snowball your portfolio that way?
Yeah, it could. That's what a lot of people do that. Like I said, that if that's kind of your goal, it's even more important to have that exit strategy in place, to be able to get another mortgage after you already have one, all those things. And I can't speak too much into that. I would say, again, kind of your mortgage professional should advise you on some of those things. But I would say you need to put more consideration if you want to say, all right, we want to do this once a year. I don't know what it looks like to get approved for that second mortgage because we have very little equity in our home right now. We put down 3.5%. And so a lender looking at that probably going to be a little bit more hesitant to give us another one, So if you wanted to put down more, or if you want to take a bet on a market that's appreciating at a huge rate, which again is more risky to kind of bet on. But that's what I would say is kind of look into it from that perspective of your exit strategy.
For sure. And hopefully all this is building on it, that to that point, if you start house hacking, well, now you have the time, the freedom, some more finances saved up. Yeah. You could hopefully do more education or spend more time learning versus stressing about your house payment, right?
Yeah, or you can save so much from your first house hack that you could then have enough to put down a larger down payment or pay down your mortgage to where you had enough equity or whatever combination of that. That's the goal.
For sure. And for me, I feel like that's kind of where the real estate investing starts to get fun. Once you kind of get involved in the game, the routes and the doors almost open more. People talk about all the time, your first one's the hardest, your next 10 are harder, so on and so forth. But eventually you just kind of get involved in the community. So to me, and maybe you're the center, I think that's kind of what is beautiful about getting started.
Yeah, I think for us too, I still have the goal of owning Airbnbs that are standalone. And now we have the experience, the confidence of managing. We know the ins and outs of what it looks like to manage a property, to analyze the numbers before buying, furnishing it, launching it, all those things. So I think it's going to make it a lot easier for whenever we do want to pull that trigger. It brings opportunities with that experience too. If I wanted to start, for example, a property management company with other Airbnbs around here, I know how to run and manage an Airbnb. I could say, hey, pay me 20% of your profit or whatever it is for other companies. Or other people, so the experience is so valuable to have. And like you said, you just kind of have to get in the door. And once you're there, I think it kind of starts to snowball.
For sure. I think you're 100% right. And all these ideas, all these strategies we've talked about today, of all of that, what's one thing, maybe we haven't even mentioned here, that you feel like someone should take away from today's episode?
Yeah. I'm biased to house hacking. I would say, that's my biggest advice. If you're willing to kind of, sacrifice in the short term, for that immediate and then also hopefully future gain, I would look at maybe a triplex too. You got, if we had 2 units, that could be a cool thing as well. It's really just about looking at what's available in your market. Like for us, duplexes and triplexes, that's what traditional real estate investors flock to. So for, somebody new getting started, those were way overpriced for us. But I'm a big proponent of house hacking. I guess that's my main takeaway.
That's awesome. And there's nothing wrong with being excited about what you're in and what you're doing, for sure. That's awesome. So to that point, if someone's ready to jump out of their seat and take action, do you have any resources for them to use to help get started?
Yeah. So I have the spreadsheet that I used and kind of put together to run some of the numbers. It's easiest to kind of see it all for me in one place on a spreadsheet. Once you talk to your lender, you get kind of what you're approved for. You can then use the spreadsheet to type in, all right, if I found this property for $500,000, here's what my purchase price is, here's the current interest rate, all those things. You can plug in your metrics from AirDNA or Rentometer and get a really good idea of, okay, here's what my out-of-pocket expense would be if I were to move forward with this property. And you can get that. I have it on my website. It's starthousehacking.com. You can download it, and I have a little video that walks you through how to use it. But that, along with talking to a lender and an agent, would be my first action steps.
Well, awesome, man. And if there's any ways that people want to get more involved with you, do you have any socials that you're willing to provide for people to reach out to you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, or it's called X now, I guess. That's the main place to find me.
Awesome. Well, cool, man. Well, hey, we appreciate all the information today. This was an awesome episode. Thank you so much for coming on.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you again for having me.
If you enjoyed today's conversation with Jacob, then make sure to check out episode 17 of the Brothers Frontier podcast, where we interviewed Adrian Smoot and how he was able to turn house hacking into his own real estate empire. Be sure to watch our YouTube Shorts, TikToks, and Instagram Reels, where we highlight the best parts of each episode. If not already, make sure to follow us on all our socials, including Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, and tune in every other Monday for more episodes. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you guys later.